Converted Man here. I've got lame goth mom here, and she's Jewish, and we're going to be talking about that. So that will be a thing. Say hello to everyone that will be here eventually at some point, hopefully.
Hello.
All right, yeah, okay, great talk. Goodbye. No, all right. So, you're
Perfect.
gothic, you're Jewish. I don't know where to start. I mean, oy vey, you know.
You know, exactly. The Gothic thing, believe it or not, before I had a child, I'm Ashkenazi, so most of us incredibly pale, pasty. I don't know. You wander around in the desert, forever. You think you'd actually have some melanin. Like most Ashkenazim, I don't. I'm very pale, but I have had very black hair. Now it's rapidly graying, but you can call me Kate or Katie for the duration of it. No need for fancy titles. But thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Jewish. Now, are you Jewish by birth or by choice or both? What does that mean? Because there's two different kind of elements of that.
So my mother was a conservative Jewish woman. She married a goy. She married a non-Jewish man, but a lot of Jews, including my mom, believe that Judaism is matrilineal. Although there are some people, Reformed Jews, think it doesn't matter as long as you have one Jewish parent. But yeah, long story short, I have a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father.
So you're both by birth you are Jewish, and then
Mhm.
the religion that you've adhered to is also Jewish. Would that be
Yes,
correct? Okay.
correct.
So is that something that later in life, like first when we're born into like a religion, and we don't really question it, but is it something that as you got older you had any questions about, or is it just been kind of like, yeah, this is the way things are?
You know, having a non-Jewish father probably put it more on the forefront than if I would have, lived in a strict one religion household. My mother was not particularly religious. It was her second marriage. She came from existing, in a purely pretty conservative Jewish marriage to being married to my dad, who was not really at all a religious person. And there's a whole lot to unpack there. I could tell you a lot of crazy stories about their exploration of Mormonism, and it got a little crazy in my teen years. But I think I was always sort of open to looking at those things, and it was certainly on the table from the time I was pretty young.
So yeah, with that, because obviously, Gothic, you can't be the traditional Jew because I'm pretty sure would be against hair coloring and stuff like that. They're pretty conservative. So you're more of a liberal. What would the term be? Uh,
Typically, when we talk about the three major facets of Judaism, you're looking at Reform Jews, which you sort of think of the stereotypical Hollywood liberal Jews, people who probably aren't that interested in strictly following the law. Then there's the Orthodox. You have the women with the tishkas, the head coverings, and the very sort of strange looking full beard get up, and conservative falls somewhere in between that. I would say I probably have gotten more conservative as I've gotten older, which isn't that unusual for married women, and particularly women as they age tend to become more conservative. But I still don't follow the law perfectly, certainly by any means. I don't keep kosher. I do on high holy days. That's about it. I wear sleeveless shirts.
Now with
But
with the kosher thing, there's about, if I remember right, 613 different laws in total.
yeah,
But many of them let me correct me if I'm wrong. Many of them don't apply because the temple isn't there anymore. The temple's been covered over. For those of you who don't know, the temple is the Jewish temple and the Muslim thing, whatever they call it. Like they decided it was the same place, so that kind of
Yeah.
caused some problems. So the Jewish
Well,
temple doesn't exist, and the Mound of the Stone of the Rock, whatever the belief is called, is there instead. So how does it work with? Because I don't know, because I haven't really looked into it. With the many of these laws no longer being, they apply, but you can't do anything about that. So how does that work, or do you know?
there are all sorts of opinions on this, and we have texts devoted just to picking apart the law itself and saying, well, this part contradicts this part, but not really, and yada yada yada. So in the Talmud, it gets pretty detailed, and it tries to sort of reconcile some of those points. And you have these different rabbis saying, "Hey, this doesn't match up with this, and this is how it really is. Yes, you can do this. No, you can't." And you get a lot of conflicting voices and a lot of disagreement.
So there isn't a answer to, it's like, well, we can't, do animal sacrifices because there isn't a temple. Um, and my brother and I talked about this when the question came up, was like, well, if the temple was reclaimed, rebuilt, would a lot of Jews want to do it? And I don't know. I think that people would like say that they want to do it, but no one's ever actually participated in an animal sacrifice. So I think that people would just be so appalled at actually doing it that they probably wouldn't want to do it after they saw it one time. I don't know, but
Yeah,
from
I would love to see modern people trying to grab onto a lamb that does not want to die.
yeah, would
The
you would you
hair onto the lamb.
would you want that to make a comeback, hypothetically, if it could, or would you just be like, whatever, I can live with or without it?
I am not a rabbi, and I'm probably not the best source, but this is how I view it. When people talk about things like animal sacrifice and making a sacrifice to God, I think that to some degree that's largely been replaced in society by what's the word? The tithing, things like that. The point is, it's supposed to be giving something for the grace of God. If you went to you're giving something to God to basically support the religion, not just the religion itself, but the things that surround it. So I tend to think of the animal sacrifices as sort of symbolic. It doesn't really match up in a modern sense. So I don't really have, I don't have a dozen lambs laying around where I can just kill one and feel like, oh, okay, this is, I would have to go out and
Where does one
let's
purchase
give
this
it,
in the first? Yeah, it would be
I
weird
don't,
to have it make. I mean, if it did come, it
yeah,
would certainly be a change. I don't. Again, unless it was a thing, it's impossible to know how many people would go and participate in that, or how many would be like, oh, that's appalling, and we don't need to do that anymore. It would certainly
right.
be, it's really difficult hypothetical, which is why I produced it. But
Yes, and yeah,
there's
I
other
think
things.
something,
Oh, sorry.
oh no, something I wanted to add is I think a lot of that wasn't meant to be taken quite literally. Giving that piece of what you have to the temple means sustaining it so it becomes self-sufficient. You can't really have a society that develops intellectually. You end up with just a agrarian society that's trying to survive unless you have those who are creating a demonstrable product, if that makes sense. So you have to give something to that to grow in terms of developing a culture, developing a written language. Those donations or sacrifices of other people become important. But I don't want to bore you. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. People, with being as skeptical channel as I've been for years, I mostly cover Christians because they're they're all over the
Mhm.
place. They're kind of easy targets in a way, and you don't get that many. I've gotten like, well, why don't you cover the, whatever? And it's like, well, give me an argument that somebody's made and I'll cover it. And with the Jewish people, it's like there is not, that I'm aware of, like a Jewish apologetic out there. There isn't that sort of need to proselytize in Judaism. Could you talk a little bit about why that is?
You know, we're not trying to recruit new members. It's not essentially the basis of Judaism. I'm sure you know the story of Abraham and the promise that he was made by God in the dream, saying, "Hey, he doesn't make any fancy. God doesn't make any fancy smancy promises of I'm going to grant you eternal life, and there'll be rainbows and kittens, and you'll be in heaven with the angels, and your mother will be an angel, and your dead great grandma will be an angel, and it'll be great." But he essentially makes three promises. And I think the Christian interpretation of that, you see kind of a strange version to me where, yeah, in a sense, he promises Abraham a, uh, a permanent life through his people doing well by giving them a nation and a blessing for all nations. And that's not really, I guess, a particularly crazy thing. I mean, that sounds pretty wonderful. That's a pretty good sell, and I think that's something worth believing in. I don't think I'm going to turn into an angel when I die and get a cloud and a harp and wings. That doesn't seem very likely.
Yeah,
But
the Jewish position on the afterlife is very different from the Catholic or Muslim or any, every religion has their own view, but uh,
yeah,
obviously you're speaking for your own beliefs on this,
right,
uh, and or also some Jewish beliefs because those two might have different views. I'm not sure. So
right.
what is your view? Because I've heard of Abraham's bosom and things like this, and that's like, what the bleep is anyone? What does that mean? And everyone has their own view. So, what's your view on an afterlife, or is there one? Do you just go to sleep until the Messiah comes, or what is that?
So I've heard some really great arguments from a different couple of rabbis, and they've ranged from there is no afterlife to yes, definitely we will walk again. But I would say it doesn't really matter if there's an afterlife as long as our people continue to prosper. God's fulfilled his promise. He doesn't promise that I, Kate, am ever going to live again. And that's okay. Right? I got my shot. If I can hold to the law as best I can and try and be a righteous person, if I can do that, having everlasting life by having my people prosper is enough. Blessings for all nations is enough. Having land, having a place in this world for the future that is clean and healthy and happy is definitely enough. And it doesn't really matter to me if there's life after. I know that sounds kind of strange. I mean, I would like to know if somebody has a good, clear answer where I can finally feel like I truly know that. Great.
Yeah. Now, it, from the outside looking in, the idea that the real, actual, only God would reveal itself to Pacific people seems very tribalistic. What what explains that? I don't want to say explains it away, but what answers is like, well, what about everyone else in the world? Why? What are they supposed? Where's their God? How does that work? Because God, picked the Jewish people to be the ones that he would use to prove a point or however you want to put it. And it's like, well, what about everyone else? They're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. So, is there an answer to that sort of tribalistic view that people could have about God and the Jews?
So I don't remember if it's in the Kabbalah or if it's in the Talmud, but it was actually the truth or the word of God was offered to all people. We were just the only schmucks to accept it. So
I
we're like, oh yeah, sure,
don't
okay.
I don't know if I read the schmucks part in the Bible. I don't remember that.
Basically, we're like, yeah, a laundry list of rules and like a legalistic way of dealing with getting around stuff. We love it. Sure, hand it over, God. But yeah, I think that's just it. It's accessible to everybody. I do personally believe there is one God. I don't think that I am capable, certainly, of understanding God entirely. But I know I believe, and the majority of Jews believe, in current day form, that there is one God. Now, you probably know this as a skeptic and somebody who finds religion interesting and does a little studying on the matter, that a lot of Jews in the early days did not believe in just one God.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of. Yeah, they
Yes. Yes.
engaged. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much the history of the religion in and of itself is something that Christians just don't have any clue about. And but I think that although I haven't seen a study, I would make the guess that Jewish people would probably know a little bit more about the history because history is so important for the Jewish person because well, although I don't know if history or if it's tradition that's more important or if that's kind of depends on your family and things like that. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I hate to speak for all Jews. Probably there's a heavier emphasis on tradition than with Muslims or Christians, just in what I've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I
There's
mean,
a real love.
there's just that feel of like, well, we all seen Fiddler on the Roof, so it's got to be tradition. That's been drilled into the zeitgeist, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's certainly a lot of emphasis on that. I agree. Tradition is huge. It's like, oh, we've been doing it this way for thousands of years. Let's keep doing it. It hasn't failed yet.
Yeah, and I've also noticed you say God, you don't say a condensed version GD or Yeshua or some other version. So again, there's more of because when I emailed you, I was like, okay, well, I should put G dash D to represent that I'm talking about your version of God rather than
Mhm.
somebody else's God. Uh, so you don't have that. I don't want to call it a hang up. I don't know what else to call it there.
I mean, it's a hang up. I think that's fair, and I'm not a terribly easily offended person about that. But for me, I know that any image or anything that represents God, whether it's writing Yahweh or God, anything that is supposed to represent my God, I never want to create something that could be erased because it's borderline blasphemous. It's probably a lot of hang-ups about tradition, probably my own stereotypical neuroticism.
Is the danger there that you or someone else would come to worship the image rather than the thing itself?
Oh, wait, absolutely, that's a real danger. That is a real danger. I think that, especially for lay people like myself that aren't trained, that have a limited understanding, it's important not to worship the concept of God, but to really try to know God, which is a challenge because we're just limited. Ultimately, it's about saying, okay, I believe in God, and believing in God, I agree with Jordan Peterson 100% when he said belief is about acting as though God exists.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole video in and of itself because I'm not
It
sure
is.
what that means to him. Although I have
Right.
my speculations. Um, it from my point of view because I don't believe in any of those sort of things. It's like, well, how can I act like something believe that exists when I don't believe in that thing? It doesn't. just doesn't have any coherence from my perspective. I have no more belief in God than I do of goblins, ogres, or dragons. So, all the GODs out there, I just don't believe in them. That's all it is. So somebody say,
Sure.
well, you act like you believe in goblins, orcs, and dragons. I'm like, no, I don't act like I believe in GOD. So, because it's the initials, and but yeah,
Well,
I mean, how there is the Jewish view. You said it a while back when you said your mother married a non-Jew. You have that's what's that word again?
goy. Yeah, I
Goy,
think if you
goy,
talk
yeah,
about it,
yeah.
yeah,
The goy are the non-Jews. So I'm a
yeah,
goy.
goy are my
Everyone's a
non-Jews.
goy that's not a Jew. Now, so what is because everyone I've heard some rabbis say some things on this. I've heard Jewish people several. What's the view of us pesky, skeptical, atheist types? Where do we fit into the picture, if at all?
Of course, God wants to hear your prayers and wants you to be a good person and everything. But the ones I know aren't too concerned. And as long as you're behaving morally, it's not really my business to say, you need to believe in a big magical sky fairy, and you need to follow my laws, and you need to listen basically to me. I don't get paid to legislate morality or belief, or just, no, that's craziness. Other people's beliefs, whether they're true or untrue, if they're not hurting me, if people are being good people, not my business.
Um, and beliefs, of course, that's like the main underpinning. We hear faith, and I've heard all sorts of arguments for God, and there comes this question of, well, isn't it just at the end of the day faith? Can't we just, some religious people will own up to that, some won't. So, what's your position? Do you think that there's solid argument or proof for God of some sort, or is it just ultimately, pure faith, or somewhere in between there?
Oh, I think the fact that my measly people haven't been crushed beneath the heels of more powerful nations and all the people that we have made mad, all of the things that we've done and haven't been wiped clean from this earth is a testament to what God has been willing to deliver on His promise. But you can't really prove unless God shows up and say, "Yes, it was all me. I did it all. Thank me." I can't prove that. Obviously, there are a lot of people to be thankful to, but yeah, I would like to believe. I do believe that it is an act of God that we are still here and that we are getting through this as a people and that we are continuing. We have Israel again. We have these things. But I think as far as showing you, showing you an, good candid shot of God, I don't have that. And that's kind of a challenging thing. Of course, then, religious people, like myself, always want to say, well, you have to have faith that these things were caused by God and not simply all of the people who contributed to this and yada yada. But it goes back to you have to look at the word of God, what He has promised. Are those things coming true? If you look at the prophecies of, what's the book before Elijah, the book of Daniel, some of those things have come to pass, some of them have not yet, and I tend to be willing to take a risk on them because that's something that not only my heart greatly desires, but those things that have come true restore and strengthen my faith.
Yeah, the prophecy stuff is interesting to me because there would be uh, something that could potentially be hypothetically verifiable if there were certain requirements met. And the requirements that I have and that others have are pretty strong when it comes to saying that something in the future would happen, because you have to be really
Yeah.
precise in language, and I don't see that in the Torah or the Old Testament. Other people apparently do see it there. So there's that. That would be a debate in and of itself, I suppose. Uh,
Oh yeah, and that would be one I would be happy to have if we wanna if you are happy with this and want to revisit this at some point. I would be happy to do that. I think that you've been really respectful, and I really appreciate that. And I hope you feel that I've respected your beliefs or your skepticism.
Yeah, I don't. I've said this many times. I don't even know that I have any beliefs other than. I guess I'm stuck with the a priori beliefs that they call them in philosophy, like reality is real. I can't help but think that that's true. you know.
Yeah,
But
that's
other than that, I don't know if I have any beliefs other than it's like, well, logic works. Is that a belief? I don't know. Let's see. It worked. Yeah, it still works. Okay. Yeah. So.
oh, I
But
mean, there's certainly people who don't believe in logic.
yeah, I've met them.
Exactly.
Times. I've encountered those people. Yeah, but with what you're saying with, like, you look at the book, you look at the word of God. Well, you have to already assume that it is the word of God. You have to assume that there's a God to call it the word of God. So it's kind of almost in a sense you could say that's circular to some degree,
Mhm.
because it's also possible that talking about prophecies, like, well, this came true. It's like, well, how do you know that, like, how is it initially that this person is known to be a prophet in the first place? Like, what qualifies a person to step forward and say, well, here's what's going to happen, X, Y, and Z, and you're like, well, let's just write that down, and then later on, Z didn't happen. Let's get rid of that, erase it.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing
Oh,
stopping that. A lot of now, at least one of the things in the Torah, and I can't remember which one. You might know it. I don't know. But at least one of the prophecies in the Torah was altered for the Christian Bible. Um,
is this something in Daniel?
I I might have been. I honestly can't remember, but I know
It
that,
sounds like a Daniel or Elijah thing.
yeah, it might be, but
Yeah.
I don't have it. I couldn't find it in
I don't know.
the Jewish fact kind of page that I have on this. But I do
Mhm.
know the Jewish people do not view Jesus as the Messiah.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that the Christians claim to be prophecies, the Jewish people don't view those as prophecies. And that's basically why they don't view Jesus as the Messiah. And also, there's another reason that I think is even more important that people miss out on, which is Jesus isn't the Messiah because he didn't do what the Jewish people are expecting the Messiah to do, which is um, be a political figure. Is that correct?
Right. He was not a successful politician in any sense of the word. He was not and that's sort of Christianity's thing. Jesus of Nazareth, I'm sure, a lovely human being, but he was, one of many people who was like, "Hi, I'm the Messiah. It's me, guys. Look, I can do magic tricks." And there were all kinds of people running around. I'm sure you're aware of people saying around that time saying, "I'm the Messiah. It's me. No, guys, it's me." He was never king of anything. He was never a substantial political leader. It's just kind of strange how he lucked into having a religion around him that paints him as God. And also, the Messiah is not literally God. I mean, that's just very strange. I mean, he does bridge sort of, I guess, the world between God and man to allow God to not to allow God to fill his promises, but sort of as a fulfillment of the promises that God has made. His
Yeah,
three
his name
fathers.
isn't even Emmanuel. Like they say, "Oh, call him Emmanuel," but then he's called Jesus from then on. It's like, well, wait a minute, what happened? Did you forget what to name him?
It's very strange. And then it's like, well, he can walk on water. It's like, well, that's nice, but
Well,
that's very
has that helped me?
that doesn't help me. It's like he made a blind guy see again. That's very useful, but that doesn't really,
Make all the
the
blind people see
yeah.
instantly. That'd be good. Uh, Now, of course, sorry, yeah, Muslim Islam is,
Hmm.
they've got the real true God for sure this time, and Allah. Now, is Allah Yahweh?
Yes.
Okay, but some say it's the moon god. So where is that? What's
I I've heard that there. Listen, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all are, all of them are Abrahamic religions, same God. I've heard this stuff about moon gods. I think with Islam, they're the new kids on the block, and I think it's easier. Ooh, I don't want to. I think it's easier to hate somebody if you sort of create an alienness and an otherness about them. So
hmm.
by saying, oh, we don't even share the same God, it becomes easier. But we have overlapping prophets and things like that. I think they got a lot of things wrong. I think they got a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, and
So,
Islam, many of them don't like Jewish people, and that seems to be something that you hear about anti-Semitic this and that, and it's like,
mhm.
well, what? Why are the Jewish people so disliked by seemingly, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people. Or is it we just hear a lot about that? I'm not sure, but at any rate, seems like you get the impression it's like nobody likes these people. Why? What did they do? They didn't do anything. So is
Well,
this?
we've done some wicked stuff, but
Oh yeah, you've done your share, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
everyone has, but it just seems like the Muslims really have it out for you. Not that they don't have it out for everybody else too, but there's an animosity there. Does that go back into history with wars fought between the two, or what do you make of that?
There's a number of things there. Wars, squabbling over land, resources. You have this tiny little fragment, a few million in the world, eating up a whole bunch of resources and selling people into slavery. Listen, they did it to us too. But some pretty terrible things happened, slaughtering people. There are going to be hard feelings. And at one point, the Jewish people were in a position to become as culturally relevant as Greece. That hasn't really come to fruition yet, but that's pretty amazing that we've had the cultural influence that we have, considering we're a very small number of people. So I think there are some hard feelings. I think we've had far more of a cultural influence on the West than Islam, and there's some hard feelings there. And like I said, the whole slavery and murder, and yeah, that causes a little tension.
Right, right. I mean, many of us, skeptical atheist types have said that the world would be better, or without religion. You'd at least have less to debate about. Hypothetically, you'd have one less thing because the problem is if you say your God told you to do X and I say my God told me to do Z, and we're both right and we can't be wrong, then how can we sit down and negotiate? We can't, so we have to go to war. What's your what's your view on that? Like, is there a way to negotiate um, between people that have different views on what and who God is?
Oh boy, that you've
Yeah, I know.
thrown
Simple
the whole
questions here. That's all.
Palestine, Israel, right? Yeah, that jumps. Is there a way? We certainly haven't figured it out yet. If there is a way, I don't know. Certainly, it's not really possible at this point. If you could just blot it out like a line in a newspaper and make everything secular, I still don't know that it would fix everything. You know, obviously, in a setting like you're American, I'm American. Obviously, in a setting like this where we have such religious diversity, it just makes sense to have a secular society where you have somebody. It's just going to cause problems. Otherwise, prayer has no business in the public realm, in public schools, in courts, or that's craziness. So that's fine if you want to worship God. Certainly, religious freedom is fundamental. And I don't think religion inherently harms society. I think it's offered some structure. It's good to have a list of things to base laws off of, like don't kill people, don't steal from them, try not to murder them.
Yeah, yeah. I
You know,
mean, those there's
yeah,
certainly laws we can all agree with, regardless of whether we
sure.
have a God belief or not. I think the problem with Islam is they want a lot of them, way too many of them want Sharia law, and I don't think that they really understand that it would be just as bad for them, if not worse, than it would be for everyone else.
I mean,
And
yeah.
there's many reasons for that. It's really sad because uh, back in the 40s or 30s, before this idea caught on of Sharia, uh, they were really prospering. They were doing really well. So,
Yes,
that's just religion. That aspect of the religion ruined them. And
it is.
so it's like, well, religion is bad, or it's not as good as it could be. But with the temple, with Judaism, it's like, well, are is there there's many contributions, or is there, can we point to things and say, well, look at what good has been done here and here? Or, I know that Christians will do that many times, like, look at how many different charities we've donated to, or whatever. Is that an important aspect of the religion, or is that just kind of kept quiet, like, maybe the temple donates, but if it does it in very quietly? Or
So,
I'm not sure that
I
that
think,
question made sense, but it made
no,
sense in my brain better.
I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying, is there as much emphasis on charity and
Yeah,
giving?
trying to say, like, look at how much good our religion is doing, kind of thing.
Well, I think that there's some emphasis on that, on virtue signaling. It's just something that religions and religious people like myself have to be wary of. I've certainly caught myself taking part in those things, but you know, there's certainly less emphasis. Christians, like the Catholic Church, does wonderful, wonderful things. They have the money and the resources to, quite frankly, but they contribute a lot positively to the world. It's like, well, if you're going to provide water and food for all of these African villages, sure, you get to talk about Jesus for a few minutes. Go for it. Just do those things. There's actually an ambulance service in Brooklyn that operates as a volunteer service. Primarily serves the Jewish population. That's the people who are reaching out to it, but it does service other people. And those things are great. They're wonderful. I'm glad that Jewish men and women are choosing to serve God in that way by doing that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a religious thing. I think it's probably talked about less than Christians would talk about it, and that's fine. That's just a cultural difference. That's one I respect. I'm not making any value judgments.
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of bouncing from different things that come to mind as questions, trying to also read
Sure.
the chat and see what people want to steer the questions towards or whatnot. Because I've got all the jaded skeptical fans of mine that love to be, like, it's just faith. Like, who cares about, like, you just believe something, and would you rather know what's true, versus believe that something is true? And this is a really a question that's come up more than once. Is really if there was a truth that would absolutely emotionally devastate you versus a lie that makes you really happy, which would you rather have? That's very going to be different from every person. I know my answer. I'd rather have the truth, but I don't know what your answer might be, or if you're able even to answer kind of a hypothetical like
Hmm. I guess I would like to believe that I would prefer the truth. If it were something like, God's not real, there's no promise in that, there's nothing in this for you, you're out of luck, sister, good night. I would like to believe that I would rather know the truth.
that.
I would like to believe that, but it's one of those things, knowing something, just being 100% convicted and knowing something, I just, being nose to nose with it is a very different reality.
Hmm. Do you think that faith is something that it has some good quality to it that us skeptics are missing out on?
I've got to think about that for a second.
That's
I've got to think about that for a second.
all right.
I I would argue that I've known skeptics and atheists that do have faith in non-religious things, and not all skeptics and atheists are missing out on that. I think they're applying it differently. But
Hmm.
I think if you're asking, are they missing out on faith in God? My answer is going to be absolutely, absolutely, and knowing knowing that the choices I make are going to influence, hopefully will guide the next generation to be better and to do better and to create a better world in order for God to fulfill that promise. That certainly strengthens me, and I believe that the actions I take do make a difference and they do contribute to God honoring those commitments.
Well, I think
So,
that we make whatever minor impacts that we do in life, and hopefully they turn out good. I just view that as contributing to uh, the way that humanity will develop moving forward. Because I obviously again don't believe that there's anything except I mean there's other animals and stuff which we should think about but
I do believe in the other animals.
yeah, I mean it's just forget about the insects. Who cares about them?
Yeah,
Whatever. But
yeah.
to kind of completely shift gears a little bit political, how important was Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel? Easy question.
I mean, you know, uh, because Trump said it's real, I doubted it until then. But then I knew it was all true when President Donald said it.
Yeah,
Just
it was
oh my,
well, it was declared. It actually did happen. I mean, it wasn't just that he said it. It was like it
yeah,
was backed by
yeah,
politics
by
and stuff.
legislation, yeah.
But how regardless of who did it, how important was that for the Jewish people? Because I know that I know how my brother reacted, but I wanted to.
It was immensely important. It just it's a really it's inexplicable. It's like all your life not knowing you have a home and not being to get there and have everybody else, denying your reality or being like, well, nobody really owns this. Like it just feels like truth, and having it realized is just it gives me hope for the future that there's going to be resolution, maybe within my lifetime.
And now, have you done the journey? Because I know that that's something that many people view as that it has to be done, or some people view as good if you can do it to go to the homeland.
I think, yeah, I think everybody, every young Jewish person should take a gap year and go to Israel. I did, and I don't regret it one bit. If you can take the time and explore these things, it's absolutely wonderful. Between, if you want a little time to experience college life or whatever, fine, but go sometime between 18 and 20. It's so important to physically see it and just to be for years, the Jewish people have created a culture that basically we could put into a suitcase and take with us, and to be immersed in an actual real culture is it's just one of the most powerful experiences that you can have. Just it's there. It's not being packed up. It's not pulling from the world that's around it, having to make do, having to apologize for taking up space. But you can just be there in your country with your people.
Right. Where and so I think that this is very difficult for people that aren't Jewish to really get, because Jerusalem being recognized, this is the capital of Israel, is a big deal, because it's like before it wasn't. It's like it's not your home, even though it's right there in the middle of your home, and Israel's your home, even if you're not born there, even if you're not from there, and that's something that's very cultural to the Jewish system, that just if you're not born, if you don't, if that's not, I guess it's just something you have to be raised with, or something. I don't know, because it's very. I think it's very difficult for the outsider to get it. Because it just sounds so tribal and everything to us. I think.
I mean, it is tribal. It is tribal. That's simply the reality of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I it's kind of a strange experience because you grow up sort of in a bubble, realizing that the culture you carry with you, that's attached to you, is always going to put you a little on the outside of things, and you're always going to sort of be, especially if you grow up with a non-Jewish parent, you're always going to be standing between worlds. It's a very strange experience. How did you end up with a Jewish brother? Do you guys not share a parent, or?
It's a whole thing. I just don't want to go into it.
Okay.
This is more about you and your. I mean, you can ask me questions about stuff. Yeah, that's fine too. But I wanted to make sure to explore
Sure.
Judaism with you and your beliefs, because it's something that again don't get to do a lot of talks with other beliefs other than Christian. So it's just like expose all these poor jaded lost souls to Judaism.
Oh my, no,
What do
it's
you?
definitely yes.
Yeah, I mean it's like
Please,
let me
no,
see.
you're welcome.
What's the deal with the Circle K on pickles? I mean, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no, there's of course, and then I was bringing up the ley lines in New York, and my brother had
Mhm.
no idea what I was talking about. I was like, okay, I have to look it up, because I can't explain what belief I'm talking about, because I don't. I just remember it's a thing, and I don't remember what they're for. So there's these wire. Do you know what I'm talking about, with the wires that are above the streets in New York that are there for the Jewish people? No. Okay.
I'm not. No, no. I would have to look that up. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure, yeah, because I didn't, I totally prepared for that by, high wire. There we go. High wire strewn through city. Let Jews keep their faith. Okay. Um, so on the Jewish Sabbath, there's a loophole that's fishing line that stretches 18 miles on unity poles around the city. Uh, and
Oh, is this?
it forms an invisible enclosure called, I can't pronounce that word, ERUV, ERV,
Yeah,
in Hebrew. So
yeah.
you'd be prohibited from doing simple tasks outside the Sabbath, uh, but because you're under this, then you can. So it's just it changes how things work, and it just reminded me I had this website that talked about there's appliances that the Jewish people just made for Jewish people for the Sabbath, where like the oven will be preset the day before to start cooking whatever might be in it, and then to stop at a certain time, and all this, like, man, you've created a loophole. I mean, like, like
We are legalistic. It's like, oh, well, you have anything that has a light in it because it's like starting a fire. My cousin takes the light bulb out of his fridge every day before sunset on Friday, screws it back in the next night. It's like that.
Right,
That's
but
okay.
and of course you could get into what is work. Is moving out of my bed work? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, is metabolic work? It's like, well, come on.
it's like, well, going to service, that is a chore, so that's work. So we can't, and of course,
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I put that link in the side chat for people that wanted to read it. It's from New York Post. Yeah. Um, wanted to ask if you'd seen the movie A Serious Man, because that's a story about a Jewish person that my brother and I had watched. I don't know if you've
I
seen.
have not seen
Okay.
this.
All right. All right. So never mind. Doesn't matter then. Go watch A Serious Man. We'll talk about that some other time.
I will have to put it on Netflix.
I don't know if it would be or not, but yeah, I mean it's a good. Yeah, if you can find it, it's probably just
Oh, that's what torrents is
you'll
for.
find it somewhere. But it's called A Serious Man, and it's about it's about a Jewish guy who's trying to be a serious man, and that's something that idea is in the Bible. I don't remember now where, somewhere in there, about being a serious man and things like this, and it's interesting because it has these like weird things, like the rabbi tells them this story of something that happened. It's like where the dentist finds Jewish symbols in this guy's teeth, and they lead him to this address, and then he goes there, and it's just a random place. There's nothing there. It's just like, well, what was the point of that? It's like, forget about it. You're missing the point. The point is the story. And it's like, yeah, but what was it that he was supposed to get out of it? And it's like, you're not. It's like he keeps looking for answers, and the answer is there isn't an answer. And I thought that was, in a way, that was how because that was different than how the Christians approach God, where there is a answer, and this is the answer. This is how you are meant to do things. And with the Jewish person, it's more of a mystery. Now, of course, that's my subjective view uh, of the movie, and plus Judaism as a whole. But do you think that is kind of right, at least from your view, that God is more of a mystery than an answer to all the things, or is God the ultimate answer to all the things?
I think that a lot of it we'll never know. We can't wholly and fully know God. That's absurd. And we are a limited reflection of God. And I think that Ben Shapiro said it well when he was talking about God, and essentially, like, we're a severely damaged image, and the point is to remove the schmutz and return to God, and that's what's going to make it whole and complete. I don't think that we're ever going to totally understand it. I
Yeah,
don't feel like it's my place.
Mm.
And I know that that's very hard for skeptics to say. Oh, there's no reason. You just do it because you were told this is a 3,000-year-old text. Enjoy.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, the system that I find the most common among all the atheists I know and all the skeptics I know is that I have a friend Johnny who he never God was just not a thing that he ever heard about until later in life. Like he just was raised without even that concept, and it wasn't until he was older that he ever encountered the idea of God in the first place. And he's just like, what the bleep is this? People really believe this? And so for him, it's like, wow, how do I? And that that's a barrier that I don't have because I've been a Christian. I know what that was like. Um, and for him, it's like, look, the way I'll accept God is it's gotta just show up, just say hi, just knock at the door because how can I verify this thing otherwise? What is God? That question in and of itself, like what attributes would a thing have where you would call it God? And every religion has its own take, and we're just like, why would anyone believe this when there isn't the same sort of proofs that we have for everything else seem to be lacking? There's no empirical evidence, no repeatable test. Is there? I've been looking for a valid and sound argument, but I haven't found one. So
Mm-hmm.
for the person like my friend Johnny and for myself, it's like, well, you know, we just don't see this thing there, and so
Sure.
because of that, we can't believe in it. We just, for whatever reason, if it's real, it has not given us the things that we require to believe that it is a thing. So Christianity has its answer for that.
Right.
What, if anything, or again, this is your view doesn't have to, your view
Yeah.
might be different from the main Jewish view. I don't know. What do you think the answer in Judaism is for what's called the divine hiddenness problem?
As far as accessibility to God, the divine hiddenness, I think ultimately, I hate to say it, but I think you just have to keep, God will either put that drive into your heart to know truth or not. I think every person who's a skeptic who's really willing to seek evidence, either you will or you won't. Either you'll come to the same conclusion that you're at, or you'll can come to the same conclusion that people like myself have. But I think that a desire for truth is a desire to know God. That I think if you approach it in earnesty, is ultimately going to lead you to live a righteous life, whether it aligns you perfectly with my feelings or not, and my opinions or not, and my beliefs or not. And I
Hmm.
think that more important than believing what I believe and is living righteously, living justly. So I don't think it is something that's immediately solvable. But I think rather than approach it from sort of the euphoric atheist stereotype of, no, this is the truth and I'm not moving out of it, it's just as stupid and potentially as dangerous as Orthodox Jews or, Westboro Christian sorts. Once you're stuck in that, you're limiting yourself and you're not really knowing the truth.
Well, yeah, if you just said, look, nothing's ever going to convince me that this is not true, that's nothing. That's something I have never heard a fellow atheist or skeptic say, but I'm sure that there could be somebody out there that would make that statement because people are weird. So but I've said, look, I require one of three things, and I'll believe whatever it is. And if there's a fourth way for me to know that something is true, I would want to know what that fourth way is and how it works before accepting it as part of my system. So for me, it's empirical evidence, which is visible evidence, not just with the naked eye, but with any machinery we might have. We can visualize magnetic spectrum and infrared and telescopes and
Sure.
microscopes and all that. If we don't have empirical evidence, hopefully there's a repeatable test. And the reason I want that is because I want to make sure it's not, illusion or sleight of hand or trickery of some sort. That I
Hmm.
want to eliminate all the biases from that and make so somebody on Twitter, this gal SJ, who's an apologist for Christians, uh, said, she can sense when somebody bad or weird is in the room, or however she put it. I'm like, oh look, a testable claim, and I said, I'll give you $1,000 and I'll convert to theism on the spot if you can prove that this is real. There's an easy test we could set up to do it. And she's like, oh, does everything have to be testable to be true? That was her answer. And I'm like, and I like to come back from my other friend, Bionic, who said, no, but if you make a claim, we want it tested so that we know you're not full of crap. I was like, yeah, there you go.
I
There you
think
go.
that's completely reasonable to want to test it. And I'm not an expert on those things, and I think there are people who are very smart and learned, and I think that that's great for the skeptics who are willing to open their minds. And you should be looking at the smartest theists you can find, and you
Sorry.
should be challenging those people and asking
Oh
questions.
yeah. Oh, that's like our thing to do. We love that. That's like our main thing. And then of course the valid and sound argument, which is something I add in there because I love logic and the
Hmm.
process of it. But some skeptics do, and other people have different approaches to deciding if something is true or not. And I
Sure.
say, well, is there a fourth option? I don't know. Um, but when I asked that to an apologist, another Christian apologist, Matt Slick, he said, "Yeah, just be a Christian." I'm like, "What?" So, like, don't use empirical evidence, or repeatable tests, or a valid and sound argument. Just be a Christian. Yep. I was like, what? How? But that's not a
Yeah.
system. That's not any system. That's just pick this as true and go with it. That's the very definition of blind faith. Come on. And so that's the
Yeah.
frustration of that people can't seem to accept that there's really bad arguments. And I think that because you're Jewish and you have a different way of looking at God, it's like it's not. And this is again why we don't maybe see Jewish apologetics, or again, if they do exist, they're so hard to find. You can't find one.
Right.
That
Even
it's
like
like
the most, yeah, even the most
it,
hardcore guys, like I said, who believe you something that God is going to punish you for turning that light switch on Saturday morning. They're not gonna.
that only that only applies to the Jews. It doesn't apply to the goyim. So I'm
Yeah, yeah.
sorry.
You can
I can do
turn
whatever
on
the hell I
all.
want. Yeah, I can do whatever
Yeah, oh yeah. I can wave you over, have you turn on my light.
I
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. I know people who have like Goyim as friends who are like, "Hey man, come here. Like, I need you to like turn on this for." It's like just turn it on yourself at this
yeah,
point. It's like, you know what? This is
that
not work.
reminds
This is
me
more work.
that reminds me of an episode of Seinfeld where called the Burning, where Lane finds out her boyfriend is a Christian, and he's like, yeah, so whatever. He's like, and then she's like, oh, you didn't get the newspaper today, and he's like, there it is, right across the way. It's like that's his newspaper. He's like, yeah, go get it. She's like, that would be stealing. He's like, what do you care? You're going to hell anyway. Just grab it. Just like it's
Great.
okay for you to steal because you don't believe in God, so it doesn't matter.
It's totally great.
Oh man!
That's
But then
wonderful.
there is the idea that oils are under a different law than the Leviticus laws. They're under the is it the Noah, or is it the other one? I'm not sure, but I can't remember verbatim, and I don't know that you
Oh,
would.
which one now? Say that again.
the non-Jewish people are under not under the Jewish law, but they're under either Noah's law or some other law before the Levitical laws, and I don't remember
Um,
the under the like they're under less laws or something like that.
yes, yeah, like they basically, yeah. Don't steal. Don't be a gay man. Don't. Yeah, those ones. I can't think of what they're called. Yeah, for some reason, like there's a big hang up. The worst things you can do are like stealing and being a gay man. Yeah, those weird ones. Yeah.
Yeah, the homosexuality thing is odd because, as I understand it, that's really only for the temple priest, which there isn't one now since there's not a temple. So I don't understand how any Jewish person could look at the Torah and think that it's against homosexuality as we know it in today's day and
So I actually know one Orthodox rabbi who explained it as you have to think of all men are the priests of their house, they're the first priest of their house, and that's why they can't be gay. It's very odd, and it's like, okay, I guess like you're technically like the priest of your house.
but
That,
again,
that
it's only for the Jewish people then.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can go out and do all the gay stuff you want.
But then the other odd thing I found was there's nothing said about women at all. So the rabbis kind of like are silent on that for the most part, or they're like, well, you probably shouldn't do it, like
It's
So
like
what?
sexual immorality. You're not supposed to masturbate. You're not supposed to look at pornography. Pornography. You're not supposed to. Yeah, you're not supposed to be lesbian. Like it's like that. It's not like the worst thing ever.
Basically, if it's fun, it's probably a sin.
It's probably a sin, but it's not like the worst thing. It's like, so you were a lesbian this weekend, but you didn't kill anyone. So maybe next weekend do a little better. Maybe stay in.
that sounds
And
that sounds very Jewish to me. I don't know why. It's okay. Yeah, whatever. Have some
whatever.
bagels. It's fine. Yeah. Okay. So, any questions for I'm not lame goth mom in chat? Please ask, and I'll ask her the question, and then I will
Yeah,
eventually be able to say words at some point in time. Words, something. I don't know. Say what now? Okay, you go ahead and ask me questions while I wait for questions to flood in from chat. You hear me, chat? I know you hear me.
they hear you. They're just being difficult.
Ask
Yeah.
questions to her. I'm out of questions for now. Okay, go ahead and
Oh.
you might have had some questions for me or my ideas or whatever. So go ahead. It's only fair.
You described yourself as, so you were a Christian. What was that experience like, going from Christianity to a position of skepticism?
Well, I was a Christian since from 8 to 32, and so it was I grew up with it, and I also made it my own later in life, and it was something very near and dear to me, something very important, and I was dissatisfied. I even had a YouTube channel called Infinite Hope that I was running for quite some time, and I was very, I kept getting, these pesky atheists and skeptics asking me all these questions I couldn't really answer. And the main recurring theme was wanting evidence. And I asked somebody at some point, well, why don't we just give them the evidence? They keep asking for it. And I remember it was a woman for some reason, but I don't remember anything else about that. And they said, we have the evidence, but even if we give it to them, they won't believe it. I'm like, what? That didn't make sense to me. So I investigated to find the evidence because I was going to give it to them. Well, I didn't find it, so I became a skeptic. Um, and it was emotionally difficult at first. It really was for that first year or so. I did have nightmares about death and dying because my brain had to reprogram itself to accept mortality. Because without God, there's not an afterlife. That all the beliefs I had went went vanished. I mean, if there's no God, there's no afterlife, no angels, no devils, no demons, no any, all of that is gone. So all of those beliefs just in a moment are just gone. I can't hold them anymore, and it was hard at first, uh, emotionally speaking. But I got through it and I got over it, and then I found the wonders of science and of recognizing that I can now learn anything. There isn't anything that I can ever learn that will hurt me because I don't have any beliefs. I can learn what's really real and go, huh, that's interesting, and it won't do anything to me. It can't hurt me. The reality of what this universe, this reality is that we exist in, whatever that is, however all that works, whatever it turns out to be, that's fine. I want to know what that is. Whether I'll ever know what that is, who knows? But it can't hurt me. Even if it turns out to be Yahweh of the Christian idea, I'll be like, oh, well, I guess I was wrong about that. But I have to be given the things that I couldn't find, which is the evidence to show that it is. Um,
Sure.
because it's not enough for me. Faith uh, isn't, faith is you know without, if you have fact, you don't need faith, and so that would be better. That would be preferable. And but yeah, it was difficult, and some people's, have different, everyone has a different deconversion story when they do have one. And many don't have any deconversion story at all because they've always been, they never were given a God concept growing up. So, that's interesting to hear about that experience too. And of
Sure.
course, some people have conversion stories, and sometimes those are really just, especially when they try to make them seem like, oh, this is like, wow, like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. It's like, really? That's like, I remember this one I read or heard about, like this guy saw a moth and it was trying to get out of this thing, and then the door somehow opened. I'm like, yeah, the wind blew it open, and then the moth got out. That means there's a God. I'm like, what?
I love it.
What?
That's
Like what?
awful.
Wait,
So
okay, the moth.
awful.
Wait. Okay, the moth was. Wait, go back. What? And what? How
Lost
did that?
without this God.
What? It's just the most mundane thing ever, and it's like,
Yeah.
look, I'm waiting for that miracle sort of story, and um, I've seen it every now and then, but when people are honest, it's usually a very mundane sort of thing. Um, Even my mom had said, when she briefly converted to Judaism, there's that tradition of you set a place for somebody at the table during Hanukkah or during some other important event. I think it's
Passover.
yeah, Passover.
Yeah.
Who is it you're setting a place for?
You're essentially setting a place for like everybody like in your immediate family, like somebody who's passed recently or that can't be with you. So it would be pretty traditional. And in my family, for example, like you might set a place for like like I'm trying to think about the last meal. Like my mother-in-law, who's not Jewish, but we do traditionally set a place for her.
Yeah, was it Elijah or
Elijah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. You're talking about the prophet Elijah. Yes, the saddest. Yes.
right, right. Is that also Passover? Is that
Yeah, that's yes.
okay? Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so setting up the place for Elijah, and my
Yes,
mom,
because of his death.
and my mom was waiting for Elijah to come and sit down, And
Yeah,
it was
the
like,
metaphorical thing.
and nothing happened. Nobody came and sat down, and she's like, oh, it's that's kind of disappointing. And it is that sort of like expectation versus reality of you think that it's going to go one way. You think that you're going to see this amazing thing. And if you did, that was just, I mean, who wouldn't be a Jew if Elijah showed up every time to all the different people around the world? Like, it would just be like, that's if you set up a thing, he'll show up on that day.
Yeah,
And it'd be like, okay, there's some proof right there. We can't refute that. You know, we can ask them questions, I mean, it'd
right.
be great, but it's one of those things where that's not really what it is. You're not really setting up a place expecting him to show up. It's just a thing you do, I guess.
Absolutely. It's about the sadness of his death and honoring him and giving him a place when he had no place in this world. And nobody. It's like a spoiler alert. The bag of plagues that you get as a kid at Passover, it's not a real bag of plagues. They're just cheap plastic toys. Like, thank God.
A bag of what? Tell me about this. I haven't heard of this. A bag of
Oh,
plague?
so it's a thing for kids. God, we get so screwed up. Yeah, a bag of plagues. It's a thing. It's a thing. Yeah, it's like the frogs and the locusts. Like, no, they have
Yeah,
like
I
an
know the
actual thing.
story. I just can't believe you would make that a gift or something.
It's a toy for children. A bag of plagues.
Oh, that's great. I don't know why
Well,
that's so funny to me. It's just
it is so weird. It is so. It's like nobody asked for this. They're just like, the Christian kids. They get an Easter basket.
you get a bag of
Here, you
plague.
get a bag of plagues. Yeah.
What did I do? Here you go. Here you go, Timmy. All right.
And the crazy
What?
part,
What's this? A
when
frog? A locust? What? I don't get it.
yes, and when I was a kid, the thing is, like, you had to specialty order them through catalog. Now you can walk into any Wegmans and get a bag of plagues.
Oh man, this. Oh man, I'm gonna get me a bag of plagues. That's great.
Well, if you've got a Wegmans near you, they just leave them. They're probably still on like the clearance counter in the
Oh,
Wegmans.
that's wonderful. I love it. Uh, oh man, I'm sorry. That wasn't a question about me anymore, but that was funny. Anybody asked a question for her? No one. Five people. What would Elijah want to eat? That's the closest we got. Okay. Oh, okay. We had a couple of.
Does anyone want more information about a bag of plagues?
So,
I could
all the things.
probably.
This is what I want to talk about from now on. My whole channel is going to be dedicated to reviewing the bag of plagues.
Oh my God, you could do like a whole video about like bad a holy day. Yeah, like you could do like a bad,
When you
yeah,
get this,
bad.
first you get this spinning top. We all know about the dreidel. We all
Yeah,
know.
everyone has it'll
We
mention a
all know
bed.
that. We're like, come on, this is a boring. This isn't even. I mean, it's a spinning top, okay, but you're betting. How is that? That's like that's what you do. Is that it? It's like, yeah, that's basically it. Like now I understand why Jewish people are so serious. Get bags of plagues and betting toys. I mean, it's just the worst.
It is the worst. Although we get gelt at like every major holiday, there's gelt, which are like the chocolate wrapped coins, but it's really bad chocolate.
Oh yeah, I remember
It's
that. I remember that chocolate. We had that.
oh
Um. So what
oh,
would
is that a Christian thing too?
no, we had that from time to time just because, yeah,
Oh, okay.
because chocolate coins are a thing that exists. I guess I don't know.
Oh,
So what
oh,
would
okay. I thought maybe it was
no
a
no no no?
silver
I'm
thing.
sorry.
Like,
No no.
Jesus was
What
murdered. Have silver candy, kids.
what would Elijah want to eat? That's a good. I mean, I'd assume it'd have to be kosher. But yeah, I don't know what Elijah would want to eat. I don't
As
know. Maybe that.
miserable a life as he lived, I imagine anything.
Hmm.
Like, if anybody knows the story of Elijah, like, I think he'd be, pretty pumped to do whatever. He'd be down for whatever.
Yeah. So creation ex matra or exile ala neo. or X, whatever the bleep you want to say. What's your view on that? What's the Oh, that was the question he's at. And you know what? That was to somebody else, but I don't care. I'm going to make that question about your thing because nobody's paying attention. They're having their own chat in chat
I've
now.
probably bored them to death, and thank you to them for coping. And I hope that I haven't tortured everyone too much and made everyone regret, like, coming
No,
here.
no, they're doing this is what happens all the time. They have their own like universe in the side chat there, and like
Ah,
it no longer it doesn't it, like half the time it doesn't match what's going on in the thing. It's great. I don't know. It's weird.
that
Um,
is great.
but yeah, they're talking to each other. I was like, oh, this is a question I can ask her. No, it's not. It's a question to each other. Oh, okay, screw you, chat. You hear me? You hear me? Okay, anyway. Love you all. Keep
Yeah,
subscribing. Give me money. I don't know, whatever. I don't do
exactly.
Patreon. I don't do the money thing. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll let you. If you wanted to ask me anything else, and then we'll wrap it up. There's probably. I mean, maybe next time I could go on your channel and you can subject me to whatever insane questions you want.
That actually sounds
To
great.
be
I would
fair.
love to do that, and thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate your patience.
Oh no, yeah. This was fun. I mean, I like to
I
do
had a
this.
great time.
I love debate more, but I like to explore religion and faith because I mean that's kind of what this thing that we're all doing is that whatever my philosophy is really odd in that it's like whatever our journey is, that's our journey, and maybe it's going to be towards a belief or not, but again with my central thing is if we're willing and able to challenge whatever it is we hold most dear, that I think is very important because again, going back, I'd said if we both think that we're right and neither one of us is willing to say, well, let's negotiate, then the only thing that can come about from that is violence. You've got to be able to sit down to negotiate and come to a compromise, and that means to some degree saying you're wrong, or if not saying you're wrong, but at least not getting everything that you want, which is a negotiation.
Yes. Yeah, and I would love to definitely we'll do that in the future, another collaboration. But
Yeah.
this has been fun. Of course, Jews
Okay.
aren't really fun to debate because if somebody's like, I don't believe in God because there's no evidence for it,
Yeah.
then you're
Well.
probably gonna be like, yeah, fine, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically. I mean, you didn't really. There wasn't really a counter for that because again, it's very different for the Jewish person than it is the Christian. It's not. Yeah, so it's cool. So, at any rate, so lame goth mom is not that lame, so she's got to change her name now. But her channel's in the description. Go ahead and say whatever else you got out there, and I'll add that in, or anything else you want to promote that you're doing, or what have you.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah,
tell people what the hell your channel is. I don't know. I just know it's a thing.
Oh God, my channel is so sad. My poor little, 200 my dozens of subscribers that I have. Basically, I do a lot of reactions to the things that I enjoy watching. I have greatly enjoyed reacting to Mr. Atheist. Sorry if there are any Mr. Atheist fans
Yeah, I think
out
that's
there.
how I found you is because
Yeah.
you're complaining about. I was like, because I was looking for atheist or theist, God, and it was like, oh, somebody's saying something bad about atheist. Oh, you're saying something about this guy that I've never heard about. What about him?
Yeah.
What? And I
Oh,
was like, okay, so
apparently.
he made a bad argument. I'm like, yep, he sure did. Okay, I got to talk
Yeah.
to this person now.
Yeah, he just he's you can tell he's very much a person who hasn't really thrown off the bad shackles of oppression from his allegedly former religion. He still has a lot of those hang-ups and those beliefs weighing him down.
Mm.
And that's very sad to see, and I'm sure it's very painful. But I'm gonna laugh at it. But if you guys would like to come over to my channel, if you enjoy somebody who just enjoys watching a lot of bad things on the internet and having a laugh at dumb things, come on over. Come on, for some reason I got stuck as a women's general interest channel, and I really love doing that stuff. I have a feeling this is probably a predominantly male audience. But you know, if you secretly like watching Lifetime TV and sort of a tongue-in-cheek take on that, then come on over. There's
All
enough.
right. All right, we promoted the bleep out of her, so if she doesn't go up in subs, it's all your fault, everybody that's listening to this. All right, well, thank you so much. And I would say the thing that I normally say at the end of things, but that doesn't really make sense in this context, so I'm not going to say that. Instead, I'm going to say, what is this? What? What? I don't know,
What?
Snuffy. We're going to have to talk about that in email. Email me about it, okay?
Say,
You email me about it. This is oh, they're doing their own thing. They're in their own universe. Hey, Keith. I haven't seen Keith in years. All right. So, yeah, anyways, lobsters exist. That's all I can know for sure. Goodbye, everybody. I'm going to hit the thing, and there's that. Hit that. No, that's this button. Okay, bye, everybody, and